This is traditionally known in doctrinal faith communities as Trinity Sunday, which opens up a whole lot of questions about doctrines that we might have learned and the history of who created these doctrines. Where is that doctrine in the book anyway? Where did that come from? And all kinds of questions about these words, the commissioning, the authority, dominion over, and the relationship between faith and empire. So it's pretty loaded. And what I want to do is invite you to be conscious of whatever layerings you've been indoctrinated into, whether it was reciting the Nicene Creed at the beginning of every service. Just step back from it, and what we want to do is try to enter the experience. That's what connects us with these writers then, at that time, and now. Before all of these doctrines, okay, all of these boundaries. So I'm going to start off with these questions and thinking about, I love that psalm. When I behold the sun, the moon, the stars at night, the grandeur of it all. Who are we? Why do you care about me? Like this greatness, this place of holding. So I remember the first time finding that kind of solace. And I was 8 years old, and we found out, we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but my mother was very sick, and it was really scary. And I can remember for days, just in the evening, looking out my window at night, and there's a screen, so I could breathe in the air, and watching as the lights started to dim. And then, especially on those moonless nights, I could see the stars. And I don't know what I was, there were questions in it, and I think it was like prayer. It was fear. It was wanting to be held. I mean, children's need for their parents is everything. It's terrifying to have that threat. It's like, hold me. And there was this whole, like, the sense of being held, you know, in the beauty of it, in the quiet of it, the vastness, that somehow there was a relationship with these stars, the moon, the cosmos. I didn't have words for it. And so those questions became more tolerable, the unknowing, because I was held. Seen uniquely. So I think that's the experience the psalmist might have been reaching toward. Who am I? I'm just a little sparrow, you know, in the whole scheme of things. Why do you care about me, my life? Does my life matter? What are human beings that you are mindful of them? How do I live with these questions? This curiosity, the unknowing. And maybe that response of being held, present with, walking together in those questions and uncertainty is what this is about, this gathering. So that Genesis story, the 7 days of creation, as if it were that simple, and we know so much more now about our human relationship with the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, the universe. It's so much bigger than we imagine. So how do we reconcile these stories, this 7 days of creation, within the context of what they knew then and what we know now? So then, the writers knew a lot about the power of sunlight and rain and wind and rich soil, and how food came from that. And so from that bodily, seasonal knowledge, experience, They sang something remarkable. This creation, all of it, points toward goodness. It is named good by creation itself. Not useful, not owned, good. The people who wrote this believed the earth stood still, the center of everything, and people, the very center of everything. The sun circling around it, stars fixed in a dome overhead. And we know so much more now, 13 billion years, 100 billion galaxies. The earth is this pale speck in an ordinary corner of one of those specks. What are humans that you are mindful of them? But this wonder, this curiosity is part of who we are. And across that gulf of space and time and knowledge, there's this yearning and there's this recognition of some kind of connection. But the certainties came later, hammered out at councils like Nicaea, where the Emperor Constantine declared himself the head of the church, punished and needed to codify doctrine to unify the empire, punishing anyone who thought differently. Constantine made faith a matter of the state, and questions became crimes. What if Genesis before all of this and these stories was simply this world and each one of us is created to be good? So let me tell you about my nephew, Jack. His dad called him the mayor because at the playground when he was a kid, he knew everyone. And it wasn't like he was trying to get something out of it. It was just his way, connected. I remember when he was 12 years old, Yvonne and I were playing soccer against him. He was in the goal, and we just kept missing, and there's young Jack. He said, "We can move the goalposts wider." Good. It's pretty profound. That's Genesis. It's not cosmology. It's this, what's real, before it's useful. Being itself, before there are any boundaries or rules about who wins and who loses, or who decided what the doctrine was, or who decides whose life matters more than other lives. I see the same spirit in the garden here, a garden that's tended to every day. And some days the gardener brings out 3-year-olds, and some days the gardener brings out 90-year-olds for us to hold those little seeds and plant them in the ground. And so this garden, long ago, was nicknamed the Garden of God. It reminds me of the Garden of Eden, a place that's safe and beautiful and good. A place so many people don't want to leave. So many people want to celebrate their marriages or their lives, or retreat. There's something haunting at the same time about that psalm. What are human beings that you are mindful of them? It's hard to answer that question because we're the species that creates these beautiful symphonies, the songs that we sing, and we also wage genocide. The psalmist says we're crowned with glory and honor, and we're the ones burning the atmosphere. And then the text makes it worse. Crowned with glory and honor, you have given them dominion. That word, how it's been translated and understood, has done more damage. The theological permission slip for extraction, for conquest, for treating creation as a storehouse to be emptied, and human beings the same. What are we finally? We're animals on a rock in space with our stories, with our curiosity, with this desire to understand, with this need to know why we're here. I was once called to a hospital room as an interfaith chaplain, a patient who I couldn't tell the theology, and it was just, I'm an interfaith chaplain. I didn't know exactly what to say, and that was exactly right. Just be present with. This woman fell asleep peacefully. Presence sometimes is enough. Presence in the face of unanswerable questions. Is he okay? Is Mike okay? Should we make a phone call? Hold on 1 second. It's hard to just, yeah. What's that? Oh, you want some, I have some, okay, all right, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, it kind of feels weird, like, what matters? So he's got electrolytes, right? Okay, all right. Okay. Everything matters. Moment to moment, and things change. And so now we're back with Matthew's gospel. So the 11 go up the mountain, Jesus' disciples, to see what's described as the risen Christ. And the text says, with no apology, no asterisks, no altar call, they worshiped him, but some doubted. But some doubted. But why did Matthew put that there? But some doubted. And it's not followed by, and then their questions were resolved and they understood completely. Even here, even then, some hearts catching up with questions they couldn't understand or answer. I remember a conversation a few years ago sitting in my office. The door was half open and the light was coming through, with someone who grew up as the son of a preacher, church language running through his veins, since infancy. And he looked at me and he said, I just can't believe the big lie anymore. I don't think he meant that faith was a fraud. I think he meant the performance of it, the packaged certainties, remnants of doctrines it's hard to let go of for something bigger, the pressure to pretend to have answers to questions we can't really answer. And what I said was, I know, me neither. So we both let out a long breath. That's enough. I think it'd be good to call. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, yeah. Our questions are not disqualifications in this community. You will not be excommunicated or put in prison as a heretic. I think our questions are the most important thing that we bring because it's from our curiosity, our intelligence, our desire to understand more. I think our doubts keep us from mistaking our own certainties for God. Confucius said, if man were a triangle, God would have 3 sides. I mean, our own perceptions are limited. And I think a person that allows space for doubt and questions is a person who's alive. And I think the same thing about a congregation. You know, in our visioning retreat, we held the tension between, there's a difference between the institution created in Jesus' name versus the way he was living. And that way is universal. There's a hunger, there's questions underneath that, legitimate. And I think our questions help us to not be recruited on the basis of certainty for cruelty, to deny rights of certain people because they are not aligned with the doctrine that we say is right. We're here to walk with each other. And so the commission, I believe, is something very different from what some of us might have learned. Go forth and baptize all in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all nations. Maybe it's not a domination over you so much as relationship with. Because those words have been used to justify forced baptisms and colonial conquest, and that history is still within us. It's alive in our country. To be sent differently looks like taking a walk on the stream trail with that man who has those questions, and walking with, looking for truth beyond what seems to be a lie because the question isn't seen as legitimate, held in the silence of the redwoods or under the stars. It looks like so many different things that inspire each one of us in our own unique way. Because we know seeds are planted and there are children and there's future. And it's bigger than just our own little lives. But our own little actions are part of a great whole. And so we do what we can on this little hill in our lives. It may seem unglamorous, but it's part of the whole. I don't believe we're sent to conquer minds, but to accompany lives. Not to silence questions, but to honor them as the work of consciousness. Not to resolve mystery, but to walk with our questions until they become our companions. not to replicate ourselves, but to widen the circle. Not to arrive with answers, but to show up with our whole selves and stay. That is the commission, I believe, and it doesn't require certainty. It requires courage, which is different. So this weekend I've been thinking a lot about David, a member of our congregation, a nurse, a singer in the gay men's chorus, living with stage 3 bladder cancer. He was asked to spend 2 hours a month with 4 medical students to learn more about what it's like from a patient perspective, being sick. And David gave 8 hours instead. He made handmade books for each one of those 4 students. Paintings, collages, writings. He stitched the binding. His personal stories of what it means to be ill and human and still showing up and still here and generous. He met with those students for the first time this weekend, giving them what no textbook could. He had no idea how it would go, and he went anyway. Faith, courage, uncertainty. So this weekend, my nephew Jack graduated. He spent his college years split between a homeless shelter and the machinery of venture capital, studying how capital moves and how mercy moves. And so I say, go, Jack, from the mud of the shelter on your boots, and remember what you told us when you were 12 and the game felt impossible. We can move the goalposts wider. And so can we, each one of us, individually and collectively, in our own way with our unique gifts. You don't have to be certain to go. The disciples weren't. I don't think Jesus was. Carrying faith, questions, doubt, and courage in your body. We plant seeds not knowing which ones will come up. We plant them anyway. Let your doubts keep you honest. Your wonder keep you humble. And trust your love. Imperfect, uncertain, still catching up. To keep you moving toward those whose lives, your life, and our lives, and all life is bound together with. Amen. And we'll now join in singing the summons, number 22 in the Skyline songbook, verses 1 and 5.